Hello there and welcome. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe the day has felt a little too loud, a little too bright, a little too full of clocks and errands and screens and thoughts that keep circling long after the evening should have softened them. Or maybe you are simply the kind of person who likes to fall asleep with your mind drifting toward quiet wonders, toward distant horizons, toward the great dark velvet above the world where old stars glow and silent spacecraft keep moving patiently through the cold. Either way, you are in exactly the right place, because tonight we are going somewhere very far away, and also somewhere strangely comforting. Tonight, we are taking the gentlest possible journey into space travel and exploration, not as a lesson, not as a race, not as a list to memorize, but as a long, slow, floating bedtime story. So let your shoulders loosen a little. Let your jaw unclench. Let the bed or the sofa or the blanket beneath you hold a little more of your weight. There is nothing to solve right now, nothing to chase, nothing to prove. You can simply listen and rest. If your eyes are still open, that's perfectly fine. If they are already beginning to close, that is fine too. Space, after all, is full of things that move slowly and quietly. Worlds turn without hurrying. Moons circle without announcing themselves. Light crosses unimaginable distances and still somehow arrives softly. And there is something especially soothing about space travel, even though it may sound at first like the opposite of rest. Rockets rise in fire, yes, and missions require extraordinary effort, but beyond that first bright roar, much of exploration becomes an exercise in patience. Coasting, waiting, listening, tiny course corrections, long windows of silence. A spacecraft may spend years on the way to a planet, decades on the way to the edge of the solar system, all while carrying little instruments, little memories, little hopes, through darkness so calm it almost feels sacred. There is a tenderness in that. Human beings, so brief and busy on the surface of one small planet, have still found ways to send delicate machines into the deep, to visit the moon, to land on Mars, to orbit Earth in a home among the stars. And somehow, when you think about it at bedtime, it does not feel loud at all. It feels hushed. It feels silver. It feels like listening to the universe breathe. Tonight we will wander through that feeling together. We will drift past the first brave moments when human beings left the ground and realized that Earth from above is not divided by borders at all, but wrapped in one thin, glowing atmosphere. We will float past the moon, where footsteps may rest for ages in the quiet dust. We will spend time aboard orbiting stations where astronauts fasten themselves to sleep and watch 16 sunrises in a day. We will travel farther outward, toward Mars and its patient little rovers, toward Voyager carrying a golden record into the dark, toward giant telescopes that do not touch the stars, but gather their ancient light like whispered stories. We will pass the great outer worlds, the icy moons, the silent plains of Pluto, and the future dreams of returning to the moon again, not only to visit, but perhaps one day to stay a while. And if that all sounds wonderfully far away, don't worry. We are in no hurry to get there. In fact, the whole point is not really to arrive. The point is to drift. To let your thoughts loosen from the small, immediate things and travel in wider circles. To remember that the universe can be vast without being threatening, mysterious without being harsh. Out there are no notification sounds, no traffic lights, no overflowing inboxes. There is only motion and shadow and distance and light. There are stars burning steadily. There are planets turning in the dark. There are spacecraft gliding onward because someone, somewhere, dared to imagine a path through the silence. If you enjoy journeys like this, if you like falling asleep to slow science, deep time, and quiet wonder, then this may be a lovely moment to settle in for that. You might gently like this video or subscribe, or save it for another night when the world feels a little too crowded and you want a calmer horizon to look toward. No pressure, of course. Truly no pressure at all. This is bedtime, not business. But if this kind of slow exploration brings you peace, you are always welcome here, and I'd be very glad to meet you again on another quiet night beneath the stars. For now, just get comfortable in whatever way feels best. Shift your pillow if you need to. Pull the blanket a little higher if the air feels cool. Let your breathing find an easy rhythm. In for a moment and then out. Nothing forced, nothing perfect, just gentle, just enough. You're doing great, there's no rush. The universe has been here for a very long time and it will wait for us while we get comfortable. As we begin, imagine the earth at night, seen from very high above. The oceans are dark satin. The clouds are pale brushstrokes. Cities shine like constellations that somehow bloomed on the ground. And around the whole planet there is that impossibly thin line of atmosphere, delicate as the edge of a soap bubble, holding every breath, every song, every forest scent, every storm, every whispered goodnight that has ever been spoken under an open sky. Everything we have ever known, every story, every dream, every voyage begins there, inside that fragile glow. Then imagine, very gently, rising. Not with fear, not with noise, but as though your mind itself were lifting free of the day. The world grows smaller beneath you. The night grows wider around you. The air becomes thinner, then thinner still until there is no air at all, only the great dark beyond. And in that darkness you begin to understand something lovely. Space is not empty in the way an abandoned room is empty. It is empty in the way a deep breath is empty before it becomes calm. It is spacious, open, full of possibility, full of room to rest. So tonight, let space hold your thoughts for a while. Let rockets, moons, telescopes, and drifting stations become soft lanterns in the mind. Let each fact arrive like a slow wave and then pass on without effort. You do not need to remember every detail. You do not need to follow every sentence to the end. If your thoughts blur and wander, that is part of the journey. If sleep comes halfway through a paragraph, that is a kind of success. We are not trying to stay awake for the whole expedition. We are simply taking a beautiful route toward rest. And so, with the world below us growing quieter, with the stars above us beginning to gather, with nothing to do now except be here, let us begin our long and gentle drift through the most relaxing facts about space travel and exploration. One of the gentlest things to understand about space travel is that space does not begin with a dramatic wall or a glittering gate. There is no giant sign suspended in the sky, no sharp line that says, "Here Earth ends and the universe begins." Instead, the journey upward is more like passing through gradually thinning layers of a dream. The air becomes less dense, the blue of the sky deepens, and at a certain height, people have agreed on a boundary that is useful for measuring and imagining. But even that boundary is, in a way, a human convenience. The real transition is softer than that. Earth simply loosens its grip, little by little, and the familiar atmosphere gives way to a place where wings no longer work and only true spacecraft can continue. It is oddly comforting to think that even our path into the cosmos begins not with a slam but with a fade, a gradual becoming, a slow unbuttoning of the sky. And to reach that high, a spacecraft must do something quietly miraculous. It must bring much of its own world with it. On Earth, fire leans on the air around it. A campfire borrows oxygen from the breeze. A candle depends on the room. But a rocket cannot depend on the sky for very long, because the higher it climbs, the less sky there is to borrow from. So rockets rise carrying both fuel and the oxygen needed to burn it, like travelers packing their own weather, their own temporary storm. That is one reason rockets are so large at the beginning. They are not only vehicles. They are carefully arranged towers of stored possibility, stacked with energy for a journey away from the only home that naturally offers breath. There is something almost poetic in that. Before spaceflight ever became elegant in the mind, it had to solve a very old and intimate problem: how to keep going when the world can no longer help push you along. Once a spacecraft rises high enough, another soothing truth appears. Orbit is not the same as floating motionless above Earth. Orbit is really a kind of endless falling, but a very graceful kind. A spacecraft moves forward so quickly that as it falls, the curve of the Earth keeps dropping away beneath it. It is always falling around the planet rather than down into it. That means astronauts circling high above the world are not perched still on some invisible shelf. They are moving constantly, wrapping around Earth again and again in a beautifully balanced relationship between speed and gravity. It sounds almost like a bedtime metaphor for life. Sometimes staying aloft is not about escaping gravity, but about finding the right rhythm with it. Not defeating the pull, just learning how to move with it. Long ago, the first human being to make that journey all the way into orbit spent only a brief time there by cosmic standards, a little more than an hour and a half, and yet the meaning of that voyage has never really faded. One person, sealed inside a tiny craft, crossed the threshold between the ground-bound life our species had always known and the great dark beyond it. Imagine how Earth must have looked from that small window. Not the whole planet at once, perhaps, but glimpses of curve and cloud and light, enough to understand that the world was round not only in maps and models, but in living sight. Enough to feel that home had edges, and that beyond those edges there was room. Space exploration often sounds enormous, but it can also begin in an incredibly intimate way. One face at a window, one heartbeat inside a capsule, one human mind realizing that the sky is not a ceiling after all. And when more travelers followed, many described one sight above all others as unforgettable: Earth itself. From space, our planet appears astonishingly alive. White weather swirls over blue oceans. Rust, tan, green, and silver tones drift across the continents. Night reveals threads of city light. Day reveals the soft radiance of cloud. But what can be especially striking is the atmosphere, that thin shell of air around the world, so delicate it can look almost painted on, as if someone traced the horizon with a brush dipped in pale blue fire. From the ground, the atmosphere feels endless because it is all around us. From orbit, it can look fragile, a tender veil around a dark and shining sphere. Many people find that image humbling. All weather, all birdsong, all rain, all mountain wind, all the breath in every sleeping room on Earth exists inside that slender glow. It reminds you how precious ordinary things are. Air, warmth, home. And then there is the strange beauty of space itself, which surprises so many first-time observers because it is darker than imagination often prepares us for. Even when the sun is shining directly on a spacecraft, the sky beyond does not turn blue. It stays black. That deep, velvety black of space is not the black of a stormy night on Earth, where the atmosphere still scatters light and softens the darkness. It is a clearer, sharper black because there is no thick blanket of air out there to spread sunlight through the sky. So a spacecraft may gleam brilliantly, almost painfully bright on one side, while beyond it stretches a darkness pure enough to reveal stars when the conditions are right. That contrast can feel almost unreal, blazing sunlight and black sky together. Yet it is real and oddly peaceful. It is a reminder that space is not empty of beauty simply because it lacks blue air and wind and birds. It has its own style of beauty. Severe, yes. Quiet, definitely. But also clean, spacious, and deeply still. So already, before we have gone very far, space travel begins to reveal itself not just as machinery and distance, but as a series of gentle revelations. The sky is not a wall. Fire can be carried upward. Falling can become circling. One brief orbit can change history. Earth can look both grand and fragile at once. And darkness in the right place can feel less like absence and more like rest. Let yourself drift with that for a moment. You do not need to hold every detail. Just let the ideas pass over you like constellations reflected in water. We are only beginning, and already the journey is wide enough to loosen the day from your shoulders. If we continue outward, slowly and without hurry, the moon appears first as more than a light in the sky. It becomes a destination with a real distance attached to it, and that distance is one of the most calming facts in all of space travel, because it is large enough to inspire awe, yet small enough to feel imaginable. Moonlight does not take minutes or hours to reach us. It arrives in just over a second, a tiny delay across a vast-seeming dark. The moon itself is close enough in cosmic terms to be our nearest major companion, and yet far enough away that traveling there was one of the boldest journeys ever attempted. Between Earth and the moon lies an ocean of emptiness, but not an infinite one. It is a crossing that human beings have actually made, a crossing of days, not lifetimes. Something about that feels tenderly reassuring. The nearest world is still within the reach of courage. And the journey there was never a straight line fired like an arrow through the dark. Spacecraft on their way to the moon entered a kind of elegant coast, a long curved path guided by gravity and timing. After the fierce beginning of launch, there came hours and days of quieter motion, the spacecraft gliding onward while Earth slowly shrank behind it and the moon slowly brightened ahead. It is easy, from the safety of bedtime imagination, to picture that middle passage as almost monastic. Instruments humming softly, small corrections made with care, windows framing a world receding into blackness. The deep sense that there was no road beneath, no landmarks, only mathematics, patience, and trust. In stories of exploration on Earth, there are often waves, winds, forests, and horizons. In lunar travel, there was mostly silence and the enormous dignity of momentum. When people finally stood on the moon, one of the strangest and most lovely facts was waiting beneath their boots: the dust. Lunar dust is very fine, like powdered stone, ground over ages by impacts and sunlight and time. With no weather there to wash it away, no rain to settle it into mud, no wind to sweep it into dunes the way Earth might, the moon keeps its surface in a different kind of stillness. That is part of why footprints can last for a very long time there. Not forever, perhaps, because even the moon changes in subtle ways, but unimaginably longer than footsteps in a garden path after rain. There is something haunting and beautiful about that. A human step made in a brief mission, resting in silence under a black sky for ages. On Earth, almost everything is erased. On the moon, stillness can remember, and the body itself behaves differently there, as if it too has entered a dream. The moon's gravity is much weaker than Earth's, only about a sixth as strong, which means walking becomes a kind of bouncing glide. Not full flight, not helpless floating, but something in between. The body remains attached to the ground, yet each movement carries a little more lift, a little more softness, a little more hang time between steps. Videos from the lunar surface can look almost playful, though the work was serious and the suits were heavy. Still, there is a gentle comedy in watching human beings learn a new rhythm of movement under another world's pull. It suggests that even gravity has accents. Even walking changes its music from place to place. The sky above those moonwalkers remained black even in daylight, and that blackness gave the landscape an eerie purity. Sunlit ground, sharp shadows, bright suits, and above it all no blue at all, only darkness. On much of the moon's near side, Earth would not sweep dramatically across the sky the way the moon rises for us. Instead, our planet would hang in roughly the same part of the sky, shifting only slightly depending on where one stood and how the moon wobbled in its motion. Imagine that, living in a place where Earth is not an event on the horizon but a presence overhead, a blue-white marble suspended in the black, almost still. Home would look both far away and constantly present, not gone, just watching, a lantern in the darkness. Another extraordinarily soothing fact from lunar travel is that one of the most delicate feats of the entire journey happened not in the dramatic launch and not in the famous landing, but in the quiet act of meeting again. Spacecraft can separate in space, travel different paths, and then rendezvous and dock with astonishing gentleness. That word, dock, sounds almost cozy, like boats in a harbor. But in orbit around the moon, it meant two machines moving at tremendous speed through emptiness, aligning with such precision that they could reconnect softly enough for people to move between them. It is one of the great bedtime-worthy facts of exploration. Some of the boldest adventures in history depended not on smashing through the unknown, but on tiny adjustments, calm hands, and the patience to meet with grace in the middle of nowhere. So the moon, which so often appears from Earth as a quiet decoration of the night, becomes in space travel a place of real texture and motion and memory. It is close enough for light to cross in a second, yet far enough to require a voyage of nerve and skill. Its dust holds marks longer than earthly soil. Its gravity turns walking into a slow dance. Its sky is dark in daylight. Its view of Earth is steady and unblinking. And its mission succeeded not only because of power, but because of reunion, because of careful return, because even in the emptiness between worlds, human beings found a way to come back together. Let yourself rest in that thought for a moment. Even far away, there can be paths home. Before we go any farther, let the journey slow a little more. Imagine, if you like, that you are not inside a rocket or a station or a lunar craft at all, but simply drifting in a protected little window of thought, looking out at the great quiet around you. Nothing is demanding your attention. Nothing is urgent. There are only distances and the soft comfort of not needing to cross them yourself. Take a slow breath in, and let it go. Another, if that feels nice. No need to breathe deeply if that feels like work. Just gently, just enough. You're doing great. Space can be a lovely thing to think about at night because it asks so little of you. It does not expect you to keep up. It does not mind if your thoughts become hazy. It has room for wonder and also room for drowsiness. You can simply listen and rest. You can let the facts pass by like dim satellites in a dark sky, visible for a moment, then gone. And as we continue, remember this larger theme that hums beneath the whole journey. Space exploration is not only about leaving Earth. It is also about seeing Earth more clearly, appreciating warmth more deeply, and understanding that even in vastness there can be tenderness. There's no rush. Let yourself drift. There is nothing to do now except be here. If the moon feels like a nearby lantern, then the space station circling Earth feels almost like a moving lighthouse, a bright inhabited outpost gliding through the dark again and again. One of the most astonishing and soothing facts about it is how often it goes around our planet. Roughly every 90 minutes, it completes another orbit. That means while most of us sleep through one night, the people aboard it may pass through many dawns and dusks. 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets can unfold in a single Earth day, a rhythm so different from ordinary life that it sounds like something from a dream. Morning, evening, the light returning and withdrawing in a cycle so quick, and yet so dependable that the station becomes not just a laboratory, but a place where time itself feels braided into a new pattern. Imagine what that must be like from a window. The Earth below turning through cloud and ocean and desert, and the sun rising not slowly over a still horizon but flashing in brilliant arcs as the station moves at extraordinary speed. Thin blue atmosphere glowing. Then darkness. Then city lights. Then dawn again. It is enough to make the planet feel both vast and intimate. Vast, because even from orbit it remains rich with detail and weather and endless curvature. Intimate, because you can circle it so many times and begin to know it not as a map, but as a living, breathing sphere. The station's travelers are never very far from home in one sense, and yet they are far enough away to see the whole arrangement differently. Sometimes closeness and distance work together to create the clearest view. Inside that orbiting home, one of the quietest marvels is the simple act of sleeping. On Earth, sleep depends on lying down, on mattresses and gravity and the familiar press of body against bed. In orbit, that downward press disappears. Astronauts may sleep in small crew quarters, often tucked into sleeping bags or gentle restraints so they do not drift around and bump into equipment or walls. There is something unexpectedly cozy in this. Sleep does not vanish when gravity softens. It simply changes form. Instead of sinking into a mattress, a person might float in place, surrounded by the faint hum of fans and instruments, like a leaf suspended in still water. No heavy shoulder pressed into a pillow. No numb arm beneath the body. Just drifting, held by the station itself. The idea that rest can adapt so gracefully to such a strange environment feels deeply comforting. Another lovely fact is that life aboard an orbiting station is built on careful recycling, especially of something as ordinary and essential as water. On Earth, turning on a tap can feel so simple that we rarely think about the long systems behind it. In orbit, those systems become visible and precious. Water is recovered, filtered, cleaned, and used again with remarkable efficiency, because sending large amounts of it from Earth is difficult and costly. It is a reminder that in space, nothing common is truly common. Every sip, every wash, every floating bead of water is part of a cycle maintained with patience and respect. There is something almost philosophical about that. Far from rivers and rain, people learn to treasure what flows through their small artificial world. The station becomes not only a place of science, but a quiet lesson in care. The human body, meanwhile, does not entirely relax into microgravity without complaint. Muscles and bones are accustomed to Earth's pull, to carrying weight, to working against gravity all day long without us even noticing. Remove that constant downward tug, and the body begins to change. So astronauts exercise for long stretches every day, often around 2 hours, using specially designed machines that can mimic resistance in a place where weights themselves would not weigh much at all. It is an oddly endearing image. Human beings in orbit jogging, cycling, pulling, straining, maintaining the memory of gravity while floating far above the world. It tells a sweet truth about exploration. Even in the most advanced environments, the body still remembers where it came from. The bones still remember Earth. And then there is the cupola, that famous viewing window where the station opens itself to the planet below. It is one of the most peaceful images in all of space exploration. A quiet chamber with wide windows, Earth unfolding beneath like a moving painting. Oceans slide past in cobalt and silver, storms spiral like cream in blue tea, deserts glow gold. At night, lightning flickers through clouds and cities shine in delicate webs. Many who have seen these views speak of them with a kind of softened reverence, as though the planet revealed not only its beauty but also its unity. From up there, borders disappear. Weather ignores politics. Night blankets everyone at once, though at different hours. The station circles above all of it, offering a perspective that may make people feel smaller in one sense, but more connected in another. The orbiting station, then, is far more than metal and wires. It is a place where sunrise repeats like a chant, where sleep learns to float, where water is treasured in loops of care, where exercise preserves the body's memory of home, where windows become cathedrals of perspective. And perhaps that is part of what makes space travel so soothing to think about at night. Even in the most unfamiliar setting, life finds routines. It finds bedtime, breakfast, labor, observation, quiet moments at the window. Human beings do not cease to be human when they leave Earth. They bring with them the oldest habits of home, looking out, caring for one another, trying to rest, trying to understand where they are. In that sense, the station is not only a machine in orbit. It is a small continuation of humanity, circling gently through the dark. Life in orbit also reveals how exploration often depends on tools that seem almost graceful in their movement. One such tool is the great robotic arm used outside the station, a long mechanical limb with joints and precision enough to move cargo, assist with maintenance, and even help position spacewalkers. There is something almost balletic about it. In the absence of weight, large objects can be guided with a slowness that looks serene, though it requires careful planning and steady control. Massive modules do not have to crash and clatter into place. They can be coaxed, aligned, and attached with patient exactness. Space exploration may be filled with engines and equations, but it also contains these moments of giant gentleness, where a machine the length of a small building moves with the delicacy of fingers arranging glass. And because the station is not self-sufficient in every way, another quiet rhythm of space travel appears. Visiting spacecraft arriving with food, experiments, equipment, and other supplies. On Earth, deliveries can feel ordinary. A package appears at a doorstep, and life continues. In orbit, every arrival carries a little of home with it. Cargo craft rise from the planet and gradually make their way to the station, approaching with great care until they are captured or docked. The idea that a spacecraft can leave Earth and, only hours or days later depending on the mission profile, be gently joined to an orbiting home is still wondrous. It is as if a tiny harbor exists in the sky, and vessels from the world below find their way to it across pure emptiness. The choreography of that meeting is soft, methodical, and strangely reassuring. If we drift farther outward in our thoughts, another world begins to call. Mars, the rust-red planet that has long seemed both familiar and unreachable, like a place seen in a recurring dream. One of the most grounding facts about travel to Mars is that it does not happen quickly. There is no simple overnight crossing, no quick weekend visit. Depending on the positions of Earth and Mars in their orbits, a trip can take many months. Spacecraft must wait for favorable launch windows, then spend a long time coasting through interplanetary space. This slowness can feel humbling but also peaceful. Mars reminds us that the solar system has its own schedule. You cannot bully planets into convenience. You wait. You prepare. You depart when the geometry is kind. There is a deep bedtime calm in that kind of patience, and when messages travel between Earth and Mars, they too must respect distance. Radio signals move at the speed of light, unimaginably fast by everyday standards, and yet space is so wide that even light needs time. Depending on where the two planets are, a signal may take several minutes one way, sometimes much longer. That means a conversation with Mars can never feel like a quick back and forth. Commands sent to rovers must often be planned in advance. Responses return later, after crossing millions of kilometers of dark. In an age where so much on Earth happens instantly, there is something almost medicinal about this delay. Mars teaches slowness. It teaches trust in patient systems. It teaches that not every meaningful exchange must be immediate. The rovers themselves embody that patient spirit beautifully. These small explorers do not rush. They roll over rocky ground carefully, choosing safe paths, stopping to examine soil, cliffs, dust, and sky. Their journeys may span years. Their daily progress can be modest. Yet through that modesty, entire worlds are revealed. Pictures arrive of ancient riverbeds, layered rocks, wandering dunes, and sunsets tinted blue in the thin Martian air. What makes this especially soothing is that exploration here is not conquest in a loud, heroic sense. It is attentive wandering. The rover pauses, looks, samples, listens. It moves a little, then studies. It is a scientist, yes, but also almost like a contemplative hiker in a red desert, taking the long way because the long way is the only real way to know a place. And for a brief and remarkable chapter, even Mars had a tiny helicopter tracing impossible little flights in its extremely thin air. The atmosphere there is so sparse that flying is far more difficult than on Earth, which made each short hop feel like a whisper of ingenuity. A small craft rose, hovered, crossed the dusty ground, and landed again on another world. Not a grand soaring airplane, not a thunderous machine, but a delicate experiment proving that, even on a planet with such a faint atmosphere, lift was possible with enough care and cleverness. There is something lovely about the scale of it. We did not begin Martian flight with giant passenger craft and silver cities in the sky. We began with a small mechanical pioneer making brief, careful leaps, like a dragonfly in a desert dream. So the path from orbit to Mars is filled with these soft lessons. Robotic arms show that enormous objects can be moved gently. Cargo ships reveal that even a house in the sky still waits for supplies from home. Mars reminds us that some destinations demand months of patience. Light itself needs time to carry our words across space. Rovers teach the beauty of going slowly enough to notice the ground. And even flight on another planet began not with domination but with a tiny act of possibility. You can simply listen and rest as these ideas drift by. There's no rush. Exploration, more often than not, is the art of moving carefully through the unknown. Let's pause again here, somewhere between Earth orbit and Mars, in that long corridor of thought where distance itself becomes calming. Imagine the spacecraft now simply coasting. No alarms, no urgency. Just the deep, steady quiet of a journey that knows it cannot be hurried. If you notice your own thoughts wandering, that's all right. They can wander. In fact, they can drift as slowly as a probe crossing the space between planets. You do not need to gather them all up. You do not need to be especially focused. Sleepy listening is enough. Take another easy breath. Let your body feel heavy if it wants to feel heavy, or soft if it wants to feel soft. Let your hands rest. Let your forehead smooth. There is nothing to do now except be here. And perhaps that is one of the hidden comforts of space travel as a bedtime subject. So much of it depends on waiting well, coasting well, trusting well. Not every step is dramatic. Many are quiet, patient, almost invisible. And still the mission continues. You're doing great. Let yourself drift a little farther. Some of the most elegant journeys in space have been made possible by something that sounds almost playful, a gravity assist. Instead of relying only on their own engines, spacecraft can borrow motion from planets, curving around them in ways that trade speed and direction like a cosmic dance. The spacecraft does not steal in any simplistic sense, and the planet is not meaningfully disturbed in human terms. But the encounter allows the smaller traveler to leave with a new trajectory, and often a useful increase in speed. It is one of the loveliest ideas in exploration. Rather than fighting the architecture of the solar system, missions can collaborate with it. Planets become partners in the journey. A giant world is not only something to visit, but something that can help fling a small machine onward into deeper dark. This elegant method helped make possible one of the most extraordinary outward voyages ever attempted. the twin spacecraft sent to explore the outer planets. They were launched during a rare alignment that made it possible to visit multiple distant worlds in one grand sequence. There is something almost mythic about that timing. The solar system itself briefly arranged a path, and human beings noticed. So two small travelers were sent outward to take advantage of the moment, passing the giant planets and showing us their moons, rings, storms, and colors in astonishing new detail. It is soothing to remember that some of our greatest achievements have depended not only on force and invention, but on watching carefully for when the universe opens a door. These twin voyagers carried, along with their scientific instruments, something deeply touching, a golden record, a kind of message in a bottle cast not into the sea, but into interstellar darkness. It included sounds, images, music, and greetings from Earth, assembled as a small portrait of a living world. Whether anyone beyond our planet will ever encounter it is unknown, and may remain unknown for ages beyond imagining. But that uncertainty is part of what makes the gesture so gentle. The record was not sent because success was guaranteed. It was sent because reaching outward with curiosity and goodwill felt worthwhile in itself. A little golden disc traveling in the dark, carrying songs and voices from a blue world, may be one of the most tender facts in all of space exploration. And those spacecraft are still going, long after their first famous encounters. They moved beyond the giant planets and onward toward the farthest edges of the sun's influence, where the solar wind gradually gives way to the wider environment between the stars. To say they are in interstellar space does not mean they have arrived at another star system. It means they have crossed into the vast region beyond the bubble of charged particles streaming from our sun. Even that is extraordinary. Human-made objects built on one small world decades ago are now moving through a realm no human being has ever visited. Their power is fading slowly with time, and instruments are being turned off one by one to preserve the mission as long as possible. Yet still they go. There is something profoundly sleepy and beautiful in that image. Ancient little machines, old now by engineering standards, continuing patiently into the black. Because of that distance, messages exchanged with them can take so long that a signal may spend nearly a day going only one way. Think about that for a moment. A command leaves Earth, travels at light speed through the solar system, and only much later reaches the spacecraft. Then any response must make the same lonely crossing back. Communication at that scale becomes less like conversation and more like correspondence with the deep. You speak, and the dark carries your message for hour after hour. Then eventually, from a place almost too distant to picture, the faint reply returns. It is difficult to imagine a calmer reminder that the universe does not rush to answer, and yet answering remains possible. Not all far-traveling spacecraft depend on heavy fuel or giant boosts. Some can move by using light itself. Solar sails are one of the most delicate concepts in space travel, enormous reflective surfaces that feel the tiny pressure of sunlight. Light has no weight in the usual sense, yet it carries momentum, and over time that gentle push can accumulate. The force is small, but in space, where there is no air to slow you down and patience matters more than urgency, small forces can become meaningful journeys. A solar sail craft does not thunder its way forward. It is nudged onward by sunshine, by the same sunlight that warms leaves and windows on Earth. Few facts are more bedtime friendly than that. a ship pushed by light, a voyage powered in part by brightness itself. And so the outer journey takes on the mood of a long exhale. Gravity assists show that motion can be borrowed gracefully. Rare planetary alignments reveal that timing can shape destiny. The golden record reminds us that exploration can carry kindness as well as data. The Voyagers prove that machines can outlive the decades imagined for them and continue into places no one has seen. Long signal times teach patience on a scale almost too grand for worry. Solar sails whisper that even light can become a hand at your back. Let all of that settle softly in the mind. Space travel is not always about roaring onward. Sometimes it is about learning how to be carried. Some explorers travel with wheels, some with antennas, and some with mirrors. Telescopes in space are a quieter kind of traveler, yet they are among the most profound because instead of going physically to every destination, they allow light from those destinations to come to them. One of the great advantages of putting a telescope above Earth's atmosphere is that the view becomes clearer. Our air is beautiful and life-giving, but it shimmers, bends, absorbs, and blurs. That is why stars twinkle from the ground. It is lovely for poets, but not ideal for precision. A telescope in space can observe without looking through that moving blanket of air, and the result can be extraordinary sharpness, as if a dusty window had finally been opened. There is something restful in knowing that sometimes to understand the universe better, we do not need to travel everywhere ourselves. We simply need a clearer place from which to look. One famous space telescope transformed our sense of the cosmos by staring for a very long time at what seemed, at first glance, to be almost nothing. A tiny dark patch of sky, apparently sparse and unremarkable, was observed with patient attention. And when the image returned, it was filled with galaxies, thousands of them, crowded into a little field that from Earth might have looked nearly empty. It is one of the most soothing revelations in astronomy. Emptiness is often not empty at all. Sometimes what appears blank simply requires more patience, more sensitivity, more willingness to keep looking. A dark patch can become a cathedral of distant islands of stars. The universe, it seems, rewards stillness with surprise. Another telescope, launched much later, journeys in a different way. It does not circle close above Earth. Instead, it operates far away, around a point where the motions of Earth and Sun create a useful balance, about 1.5 million kilometers from our planet. There, with the Sun, Earth, and Moon kept largely to one side, it can maintain the cold conditions needed for its delicate instruments. That distance is both practical and poetic. The telescope is not nearby in the way an orbiting station is nearby, yet it remains part of Earth's extended neighborhood, looking outward from a quiet gravitational arrangement, as if sitting on a calm porch at the edge of the yard. Space exploration often relies on such invisible structures, places in motion where balance makes observation possible. What this newer telescope especially loves is infrared light, which is associated with heat and with wavelengths longer than those visible to human eyes. Infrared observation allows us to see through certain veils of dust and to study objects too cool, too distant, or too redshifted to be understood fully in visible light alone. If visible light astronomy is like admiring the bright outlines of a city at night, infrared astronomy can be like noticing the glow behind curtains, the warm traces, the hidden architecture. It reveals nurseries of stars wrapped in cosmic dust. It catches ancient light stretched by the expanding universe. It observes worlds and structures that might otherwise remain half concealed. There is something very bedtime-like in this mode of seeing. Not harsher vision, not brighter glare, but softer wavelengths reaching into the hidden places. And that brings us to one of the most magical facts of all. When we look deep into space, we are also looking back in time. Light takes time to travel, and the farther away something is, the older the light we receive from it. To see the moon is to see it a little over a second ago. To see the sun is to see it as it was minutes ago. To see distant galaxies is to see light that has been traveling for millions or even billions of years. Telescopes are therefore not only windows across distance, but windows into the past. They do not show the universe as a single frozen instant. They show it in layers of history arriving together. There is something almost dreamlike in that. The night sky is not one moment. It is a gathering of many moments, all finally reaching us. Even our everyday sunlight carries this little time travel quality. The light warming your window or touching a morning leaf on Earth left the sun more than 8 minutes earlier. Not yesterday, not ages ago, but still not now. There is always a slight delay, even in the most familiar relationship in our cosmic neighborhood. The warmth of home arrives after a journey. This is such a soft fact to carry into sleep because it gently bends our sense of immediacy. The universe is full of arrivals. Light arrives, images arrive, messages arrive, understanding arrives. Not everything exists only in the frantic instant. Some of the most important things take time to reach us. So these observing missions teach their own kind of travel lesson. A telescope above the atmosphere sees more clearly. A patient stare into apparent emptiness reveals crowds of galaxies. A quiet outpost far from Earth can keep itself cold enough to study ancient light. Infrared vision uncovers what dust would otherwise hide. Distance becomes history. Even sunlight is a traveler. Let that all move through you slowly. You can simply listen and rest. The cosmos is not only a place to go, it is also a place that comes to us, one beam of light at a time. By now we have traveled quite far without moving at all. We have floated past stations and rovers, past golden records and giant mirrors, and still the night around us feels quiet. That is a nice thing to notice. The farther the imagination goes, the calmer it can sometimes become. If you would like, imagine yourself resting by a wide window in a darkened spacecraft. Beyond the glass, stars. Below, perhaps the curve of a planet. Inside, a soft hum and the feeling of being safely carried. No decisions to make. No tasks left unfinished. Just the steady sense of onward motion. Take one more easy breath in and let it go. Let the exhale be longer if it wants to be longer. Let your body sink a little deeper. There is no rush. There has never really been a rush out here. And as we continue toward the outer worlds and the farther edges of exploration, keep the larger feeling close. These journeys are grand, yes, but they are also made of quiet moments, patient waiting, careful looking, and the deep human wish to understand without needing to possess everything we see. Beyond Mars, the solar system opens into the realm of the giant planets, and space exploration there begins to feel like sailing into a gallery of weather, rings, and moons. One soothing fact about Saturn's rings is that, although they appear from afar as smooth shining bands, they are made of countless pieces of ice and rock, each following its own orbit. Seen from a great distance, the rings look serene and almost solid, like grooves carved into light. Up close, they are a community of particles, a swarm arranged into elegance by gravity. It is a lovely reminder that smooth beauty can be made from countless little motions working together. Much of the universe has that character. What looks simple from afar is rich with detail when approached gently. Near Saturn, there is also a moon that feels almost like a dream of another Earth, though stranger in nearly every way. This moon has a thick atmosphere and lakes, but not lakes of water as we know them. Instead, there are lakes and seas made from extremely cold hydrocarbons, substances that on Earth we would think of as gases or fuels, but they exist as liquids because the environment is so frigid. Rivers, rain, shorelines, clouds, and weather can all occur there in a chemistry so different from our own that it feels both alien and weirdly familiar. The thought that another world can have something like a landscape of lakes, yet made from utterly different ingredients, is wonderfully calming. The universe does not repeat itself exactly. It improvises. Another moon, this time around Jupiter, stirs quiet fascination for a different reason. Beneath its icy crust, there may be a vast ocean hidden from direct view, a dark global sea kept liquid by internal heat despite the frozen shell above. The surface looks cold and bright and cracked, but below may lie an enormous body of water, one of the most intriguing possible habitats beyond Earth. Space exploration often reveals that a place can be two things at once: harsh on the outside, potentially rich on the inside. An icy face, a secret ocean. A silent shell, a hidden depth. There is something very bedtime friendly in that idea, because it mirrors so much of life. What appears still may hold movement beneath. What looks barren may hide possibility. Farther still, one small world at the edge of the classical planets surprised us with beauty that no one had truly seen until a swift visitor flew by. Pluto, long imagined from afar as a dim remote point, was revealed to have plains, mountains of water ice, layered hazes in its atmosphere, and a great bright region shaped in a way that many people recognized instantly as a heart. The universe did not need to make that feature resemble anything familiar. Yet there it was, on a distant icy world in the dim outskirts of sunlight. A pale heart-like plane greeting the first close pass of a human-made spacecraft. It is hard not to love that. Even the remote can be welcoming in its own strange way. The spacecraft that visited Pluto did not slow down to orbit. It passed by swiftly, gathering what it could during a brief encounter after a journey of many years. That, too, is a soothing lesson in exploration. Sometimes you do not stay. Sometimes you get only a passing look, a few close hours, a narrow window of nearness, and then you continue onward. Yet even brief encounters can change understanding forever. A flyby can be enough to turn a dot into a world. It can be enough to replace guesswork with mountains, plains, haze, color, texture. There is no rule that says only long stays matter. Some meetings are short and still unforgettable. And when spacecraft or capsules return home from space, another beautiful and dramatic-seeming process can be understood in a gentler way. Re-entry is not really about a vehicle being set on fire by friction in the simple schoolroom sense. It is more accurate to say that moving so fast through the atmosphere compresses and heats the air around the craft, creating an envelope of hot plasma that glows. From below, it can look like a falling star or a bright ember crossing the sky. But hidden within that glow is a carefully protected interior, designed to survive the descent. I find this fact quietly comforting. Even return itself is a negotiation with air and speed and heat, not pure chaos. The atmosphere that protects life on Earth can also, under the right conditions, blaze around a traveler coming home. And once that fiery passage ends, the final stage can become astonishingly soft. Parachutes open. The descent slows. A capsule may splash into the ocean or land upon a prepared surface, trading cosmic velocity for a gentle arrival on a world with weather, smell, weight, and sound. After so much silence, so much vacuum, so much dark, homecoming ends with fabric blooming overhead and water or earth receiving the traveler below. That image holds a deep peace. No matter how far the mission has gone, the last motion can be quiet. A floating capsule on the sea. A recovery team approaching. The great adventure ending not in thunder, but in bobbing waves and daylight. So among the outer planets and the paths back home, space exploration continues to reveal its softer truths. Rings are made of countless little pieces. Alien weather may still rhyme with weather we know. Ice can hide oceans. Distant worlds can surprise us with beauty. Brief encounters can still transform understanding. Re-entry glows because air itself is being shaped by speed. And after all the darkness, parachutes may open like flowers. You're doing great. Let yourself drift with that. The universe can be strange without ceasing to be gentle. As space exploration turns its gaze once again toward the moon, one of the most intriguing facts is that water may exist there not as flowing rivers or shining lakes, but as ice tucked into shadowed craters near the poles, places where sunlight barely reaches. These regions can remain so cold that frozen water may persist for immense stretches of time. For future travelers, that matters not only because water can quench thirst, but because it can support many needs, even potentially being separated into components useful for breathing or fuel. There is something hopeful in this. The moon, once seen mainly as a dry destination for brief visits, may also offer resources that could help longer stays become more practical. Exploration changes when a place is not only visited, but gradually understood as a place where life-supporting systems might one day be built. Yet the moon would still ask much of anyone who tried to remain there. A lunar day is very long, with roughly 2 Earth weeks of sunlight followed by roughly 2 Earth weeks of darkness at many locations. Imagine that rhythm, not morning and evening as we know them, but long stretches of brilliance and long stretches of night. Such conditions shape everything, from temperature to power to routine. Space travel often reveals that other worlds are not merely farther versions of home. They have their own clocks, their own temperaments, their own ways of stretching time. To live on the moon one day may mean learning a schedule written by a sky that changes far more slowly than ours. The spacecraft designed for new deep space journeys around the moon also remind us that exploration is often built in layers. Before people step onto a distant surface again, there are test flights, uncrewed missions, orbital paths, rehearsals, life support checks, and gradual increases in ambition. This is not hesitation. It is wisdom. Deep space does not reward reckless speed. It rewards preparation. There is a lovely steadiness in the way human exploration often advances. First one mission proving a system, then another carrying it farther, then another preparing for a future that once sounded impossible. Dreams become routines, one checklist at a time. And as we imagine those future voyages, it helps to remember that even a spacesuit is, in its own way, a miniature spacecraft. It provides pressure, oxygen, temperature control, communication, and protection from an environment that would otherwise be deadly. A person stepping outside a spacecraft is not simply wearing clothing. They are carrying a personal life support world around themselves. I find that image beautiful. Human beings do not meet the vacuum of space naked and defiant. They meet it thoughtfully, wrapped in engineering sustained by countless acts of design and care. Exploration at its best is not bravado. It is preparation made visible. Space habitats, too, are rarely built all at once. Stations grow piece by piece. Modules are launched, attached, expanded, upgraded. Solar arrays unfold. Laboratories are added. Airlocks appear. Visiting craft come and go. An orbital home is assembled almost the way memory is assembled, one layer at a time, one addition joining what was already there. This gradual construction is deeply soothing because it reminds us that not all great achievements arrive complete. Some are built patiently in sections, tested in the dark, improved over years, shared among many hands and many minds. The future in space may not descend fully formed. It may be assembled quietly and steadily against the backdrop of Earth. And perhaps one of the most peaceful facts of all is what space travel can do to perspective. Many who have gone above Earth describe a shift in how the planet feels afterward. The world may seem more unified, more delicate, more astonishingly whole. Problems do not disappear, of course, and human complexity remains. But seeing Earth from afar can soften certain illusions of separation. One atmosphere, one ocean system, one glowing sphere turning in the black. Space exploration may take us away from home, yet again and again it seems to deepen the sense of homecoming. The farther we look, the more precious the familiar can become. So future missions to the moon, long nights and longer days, careful test flights, protective suits, slowly assembled stations, and the quiet widening of perspective all belong to the same continuing story. Space travel is not finished history. It is an unfolding practice of patience, courage, observation, and return. A species from one small world continues learning how to leave gently, survive thoughtfully, look carefully, and come home changed. And tonight, as you rest here on that same small world, under the same thin atmosphere seen by every spacecraft that has ever turned back to look, you are part of that story too. Not because you must fly anywhere, and not because you must do anything grand, but simply because wonder belongs to you as much as to anyone who has worn a suit or touched a control panel. The sky has always been above us all. The journey outward has always, in some quiet sense, belonged to everyone. And now, as our long drifting journey begins to settle, it may be nice to imagine all these paths at once, like faint silver threads laid across a dark velvet map. One thread rises from Earth through the thinning blue of the atmosphere. Another curves toward the moon and back again. Another loops around our planet in steady 90-minute circles, carrying sleepers and scientists through repeated dawns. Another stretches redward toward Mars, where patient rovers leave delicate tracks in dust. Others sweep past giant planets, borrow speed from gravity, and continue outward so far that their signals take nearly a day just to whisper home. Still others do not travel to worlds at all, but wait in quiet darkness, catching ancient light in broad mirrors and unfolding the old story of the universe one photon at a time. Taken together, it is an extraordinary image. Not a single road, but a whole growing network of curiosity. A species once entirely bound to one surface now sends thoughts, tools, machines, and sometimes people beyond it. And yet for all that grandeur, what lingers most softly may not be the scale but the mood. Space travel and exploration, when held gently in the mind, are full of patience, full of waiting, full of coast and glide and orbit and return. Even the boldest missions spend long stretches simply moving quietly through dark, held on course by care. Maybe that is part of why this subject can feel so peaceful at bedtime. It reminds us that progress is not always noisy. Not every meaningful journey looks dramatic from start to finish. Some transformations happen in silence. A spacecraft coasts for months. A rover drives a little and then stops to look. A telescope waits in cold darkness for ancient light to arrive. A station circles and circles while its crew sleeps, works, eats, exercises, and watches the Earth turn below. The universe contains explosions and storms, yes, but exploration itself so often depends on calm persistence. Tiny corrections, careful timing, delicate landings, slow arrivals. And perhaps there is comfort, too, in how often these journeys bring our attention back to home. The farther outward the missions go, the more tenderly Earth seems to glow in the imagination. That thin atmosphere, those swirling clouds, that blue curve hanging in blackness. Spacecraft do not erase our connection to the planet that made them, they deepen it. They show us again and again how rare warmth is, how rare oceans are, how rare breathing is, how rare it may be for a world to cradle life under a protective sky. Looking outward can make the ordinary feel luminous. A glass of water, a patch of wind in trees, a room with gravity, a bed, a blanket, breath moving easily in and out. So as you lie here now, maybe a little sleepier than when we began, you might let that feeling stay with you. You are on a small world, yes, but not an insignificant one. You are resting inside a thin, bright shell of air wrapped around a planet that journeys through space with perfect quiet. Even now, while you do nothing at all, Earth is moving, spinning, orbiting, carrying oceans, mountains, cities, night creatures, dreamers, and sleepers around the sun. You are already aboard a cosmic traveler. There is no need to go anywhere. In a sense, you are already on the journey. If some of the facts from tonight remain with you, let them remain lightly. The idea of footprints lasting in lunar dust, the thought of astronauts floating in sleep, the image of a golden record traveling outward in the dark, the knowledge that sunlight itself is a traveler taking minutes to arrive, the vision of rings made from countless icy pieces, the possibility of hidden oceans beneath frozen crusts, the glow of re-entry, the opening of parachutes, the soft rotation of Earth beneath a station window. Let them become less like information and more like lanterns, small points of wonder spaced out across the mind. And if other details have already dissolved, that is perfectly fine too. Bedtime listening is not a test. You do not need to hold onto everything. You can let whole sections blur into feeling. Sometimes the best way to receive wonder is not to grip it tightly, but to let it pass through you like light through a window. A few traces remain. A mood remains. A softness remains. That is enough. More than enough. Thank you for spending this time here, drifting through the quiet reaches of space travel and exploration with me. It is a lovely thing, really, to share wonder in a slow voice at the end of the day. If this journey brought you some calm, some peace, or simply a gentler place to rest your thoughts, I'm very glad. And if you would like to return again on another night for more sleepy science, more quiet facts, more long, unhurried voyages through the natural world and beyond, you are always welcome. You can softly subscribe or save this for later, or simply come back whenever the night feels like it needs a wider sky. For now, though, there is nothing more you need to do. No checklist, no launch sequence, no destination to reach before morning. The mission, if there was one, has already succeeded. We have slowed down. We have lifted the mind a little above the day. We have let the universe grow wide enough to make ordinary worries feel smaller and softer around the edges. So let the final image be a peaceful one. Imagine a spacecraft very far from Earth, no longer roaring, no longer turning, only gliding. Behind it, the sun is a distant, brilliant star among stars. Ahead of it, the dark is endless but not unkind. Inside, everything is steady. Instruments hum faintly. The path is true. And in one small window, if you look back, there is home. A pale blue world wrapped in light, hanging quietly in the black, beautiful beyond measure, carrying oceans and clouds and forests and sleeping cities, carrying everyone you have ever known, carrying you. Let that little world drift there for a moment. Let it shine. Let yourself drift too. You're doing great. There's no rush. You can simply listen and rest. There is nothing to do now except be here. And here, beneath your own small sky, on this traveling planet, in this quiet room, with the universe going on all around you in patient silence, you may let the night take over gently. Good night.